Welcome guys. Most of you been asking me about, does having a higher frame rate option or FPS make any difference? Well yes, the difference is day and night, especially in a game like this, where having higher FPS will give you an edge and enable you to perform better compared to your competition. So in this video, I will tell you exactly how the higher FPS will have the advantage by comparing 90 FPS versus 60 FPS versus 30 FPS. But first, you need to understand how FPS works. Basically, FPS means frames per second. Suppose you're playing in 60 FPS, then your phone will refresh the screen 60 times a second. It means you will see 60 different images in just 1 second. If you're playing in 30 FPS, then you will only see 30 images per second, so it doesn't look smooth as 60 FPS. And similarly, the 90 FPS will have the same effect. And here is the side-by-side comparison of 90 FPS versus 20 FPS in super slow motion. The 90 FPS animation looks smooth, and in 20 FPS you can notice each and individual frames. So you can feel the difference for yourself. If we slow down the footage and do a side-by-side comparison between 30 and 60 FPS, you will notice that due to the lower frames per second, which is 30 FPS in this case, the gap between the frames is much bigger, resulting in lost information between those frames. Here is an example. Anyway, I calculated the delay between 30 and 60 FPS, and that's around 10 milliseconds. But with higher frame per second, which is 60 FPS, in this case, you won't lose those frames, and you will end up seeing enemies sooner, which will help you to react quickly, and this definitely gives an advantage over your opponents. But the difference is very small, which is in milliseconds. But we also know that milliseconds can change the outcome of the fights. So having higher FPS will definitely impact on your gameplay, but does it impact on the weapon performance? Well yes, and in two situations, recoil performance and rate of fire. So here is the recoil comparison between 90 FPS versus 60 FPS versus 30 FPS versus low FPS. If you look close enough, you will notice that 90 FPS has the lowest recoil and the 20 FPS has the highest recoil in this comparison. I have no idea why this is happening, but by looking at this, we can say higher FPS equals lower recoil and lower FPS equals higher recoil. And here is a live example on how FPS will affect in recoil. So you just have to memorize this line where the vertical recoil ends. And now let's change the frame rate option to low. By the way, this is 60 FPS versus low FPS comparison, and let's see how the FPS affects the recoil performance. And it went way higher than I thought. Anyway, here is a side-by-side comparison, and there are two things that I noticed. The first one is its firing rate. In 60 FPS it shoots faster, and the second one is the recoil. 60 FPS has lower recoil compared to the low FPS, so clearly, 60 FPS has a lot of advantages, but how exactly 90 FPS will affect on weapons? So we will compare the rate of fire of few weapons. Starting with the Groza's rate of fire. So Groza shoots faster in 90 FPS as you can clearly see in this screen, but if want to know exactly how fast, here are the numbers. Anyway, the difference from 90 FPS to 30 FPS in the rate of fire is about 10 milliseconds, and that's quite a lot. Now the Barrel M762 rate of fire comparison. Once again, Barrel shoots faster in 90 FPS, and it's kinda similar between 60 and 30 FPS. Moving on to the M416 rate of fire comparison, the M4 shoots faster in 90 FPS. And Barrel and M4 has almost the same rate of fire. By the way, AUG A3 also has an identical rate of fire to M4, they both have the same results. Now to the Uzi's rate of fire. The Uzi actually shoots faster in 60 FPS than the 90 FPS. There are more weapons which perform better at 60 FPS than the 90 FPS, check the description for the full list. So the final answer to your questions, having higher FPS will make you a better player? Yes, higher FPS will in fact gives you a lot of advantages and better gaming experience, and most importantly higher FPS will enable you to react faster than before. Anyway, that's all I got for this video. I hope you learned something new. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe for more upcoming videos like these. Enjoy my bot gameplay. See you guys in the next one.